Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Seth.
And this is Never TMI.
Where we talk about real things.
And nothing is ever off limits.
What's up, Podcast Nation?
Yes, the Never TMIers. Hello. And if you're here for the first time, I'm so happy and so excited.
That would be a cool t-shirt. Never TMIers.
Never TMIers.
That would be
TMIers. Is that a word?
No, but it's like
TMI. Okay, teamers, but still, does that make sense? I don't know.
No, it's just like the Never TMIers. Like,
okay, yeah.
That
sounds a little cultish, but cute. I like it. But hello, today I'm so excited just because I feel like over the last several months, our discipline style has changed. So today we're kind of talking about discipline. Parenting, but mostly discipline. I feel like it goes into the parenting category, obviously, but probably the last 6 months to a year, one of like the biggest conflicts in our marriage has been discipline. It's been very difficult, and we have marriage counselors that we meet with every couple months, every month and a half or so. And that has been like a big topic for us just because which I'm not surprised. Like, we are very different. We were raised very different. We have different approaches, different opinions. We're emotionally different. Like, there's so many, like, between you and I, we could not be more opposite. So I'm not surprised that it's been like a touch point in our marriage, but I feel like I would say it's gotten a lot better. Would you?
I definitely agree, and I think we'll get into why,
but like our system and all that.
I think and just to share like a little bit of our struggle with like why it was so difficult and why it was a touch point. I think we just kind of had different, it's like we didn't establish any ground like framework for discipline, and there wasn't like clear roles and responsibilities.
Yep.
And I felt like there was a lot of overstepping, or it's not even overstepping because there wasn't a boundary set, but there was just like a lot of gray
this feeling of like, I'm handling this.
We were both kind of like in the middle trying to figure out who's responsible, and so, and I think, it kind of came down to like a lack of respect on my end, and I'm sure for Jackie as well, but it's like, if I'm trying to discipline one of the kids and Jackie comes in over the top and like takes over, or vice versa, Jackie's doing something, I hear it, I come into the room, and it's just like, I feel like I should do something about this. And it's all with like a heart of, I'm trying to help you. And
even like my heart in coming in sometimes was not always for Seth. It was for one of the girls or something. It was like, oh no, like I need to know what happened, and control, literally. Like, I feel like it came down to control. Sometimes it's like, what happened? Let me control the situation. You don't have this under control, or I don't trust you to have this under control. Or maybe I don't want you to like discipline her in a way. I think that is like, I don't consider myself a controlling person, but in certain areas, in that area, I feel like I can be, just because I'm such a sensitive person, which can really mess with me parenting wise, because I have to literally remind myself, like, if there's a day that she's not like, and I've talked to Seth about this, but it's like, if there's a day that she's not like, Mommy, I love you, because she does it every single day, like multiple times a day. So if there's a day that she doesn't do that, I'm like, which is inevitable. Like, she's growing up. That's, she's not gonna be 16. Like, Mommy, I love you so much. Like, that's probably not going to happen. What a dream if it did, but I highly doubt that. So like, for me to rely on that is a problem, but that is how I am. So if there's a day that she doesn't do that, I'm like, oh no, like whatever. So it can be like, it's like, I want to be friends with her. I can kind of people please, but it absolutely, I have to give Seth the room to be the leader of this household. I can't want him to be the leader of a household and like come in like yelling, like raising my voice, just like overtaking and then taking my kid's side or something like that. Like, I can't do that. That doesn't work. And that is absolutely something that I have done and something that I know is like something I really need to work on and have been working on. I think that's where it comes from. It's like a lack of control and also trust and just fear of like, I don't want to mess them up. I don't want, like, girls are so tender and so sensitive. And in my mind, I'm like, she's so young, but like kids are also highly manipulative, very smart. So it's like, I can't always just bend to like, she didn't mean to, or like, it's not that big of a deal. Cause it's like, no, sometimes it is. So there's a lot that goes into it. But I feel like for me, that like the root wasn't always like, oh, I'm looking out for Seth. It was a lot of other things too. But I know it was very disrespectful.
Is that a real fear for you? Like
what?
That you are going to mess up our kids?
I mean, I think there's just a difference between where I was a daughter to a very aggressive father, who also learned a lot and read a lot and tried really hard to learn how to raise 5 girls and 2 boys. Like, I am, and just mixed in with my personality, like, yeah, that's a huge thing of like, and it's not necessarily healthy because I don't think the opinion of our kids, one day we can give our 100% best. And I feel like one day, regardless, each kid is going to have something that's like, oh, that wasn't my favorite, or I didn't feel like they really listened to me, or I felt like unseen, or I felt like they were hovering me. It's like, I feel like it's a lose-lose kind of a little bit. Lord willing, they'll just have the grace for us that like we're able to have with our parents, like, oh, they tried their best and that's okay. But I do feel like there's an underlying, like, I want them to know how much we love them. I want them to, like, it's like the fear of the unknown of what are they going to look back and see, and what's their opinion going to be? Is it that I wasn't paying attention to them? Is it that, dad didn't listen to me, he was too harsh, or he just wasn't tender enough? And like, you're literally the best dad, so I don't know why when it comes down to the moment I'm like worried about that, because I know they're just gonna have only wonderful things like to say, but like they know that you love them. But yeah, I think in the moment it's just like, will this like mess them up, or are we not listening to them, or is there like are we not caring enough about like the issue, or maybe they're crying or throwing a tantrum because something's really uncomfortable. I don't know. So yeah, there's kind of that fear-ish, but
interesting. I didn't know
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think too though, and I know we need to get into this, but the other side is though, there is a benefit to having like your partner there, because there are definitely times when it's like, at least for me personally, and I'm working on it, but it's like there are definitely times when the kids push your buttons and you just get beyond a point of like, our hope and our goal is to always parent from a place of calm, collected, and like letting the punishment dictate the severity of the situation. Like letting the punishment do the talking, do the teaching.
Yeah.
And so we as parents are always, loving, respectful to them, but letting them know that like, hey, if you do something, like the consequence is this. And so like helping them to learn discipline to be a result of consequence, not a result of how I'm feeling towards them because of what they do. And I think that's the good side of having Jackie around, especially when things come down, because I can go to the emotional side, and then it's just like,
yeah,
everyone's getting spanks, like screw the system, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
which is like my worst nightmare. Like right. I mean, I was spanked growing up, and it's like there were times that I was like, you're literally just angry and you're scaring me. And I was afraid of him in like a sense. And like, I loved him and I was a daddy's girl and all that kind of stuff, but I was also kind of afraid of him. And that is what I don't want for our girls. And I know he was doing his best, and that's just who he was. And he's one of my best friends now, but like, growing up, and I think that's healthy in some sense. I think it's important, but I feel like getting into our system.
Yeah. So can you?
Yes. So what we've kind of like pulled from a few different things. We personally, and never TMI. So this kind of scares me to say, but I know I've talked to a few of you who feel the same, which shouldn't matter. Like this is what Seth and I have come to an agreement on and have prayed about and all that kind of stuff. But it's always a little freaky to put it out there. But when it comes to spanking, we believe it should be a last resort, but we are not like anti spank your kids. We've listened to resources regarding spanks, and one of the things that I listened to was actually like life-changing, and I really wish I knew the person's name who said it, but one of the points was like, you can send your kids in timeout, or you can do whatever, take away this, take away that. Sometimes like the most effective, quickest result or thing is a spank. Like, would you rather have this like half the time our kids' brains like don't fully even understand. Like if we send them to timeout, they don't even know what they're there for half the time. Like, it's like, go sit in timeout because you pushed your sister. They're sitting there, and we've seen this with Kennedy. She's laughing, she's playing, she's asking to get up. She's like, what are we doing here, y'all? It's like there's not, their minds aren't necessarily like, they're still developing, so they don't fully get it all the way. But it can be really helpful if you need a second, and it's like what you did doesn't really warrant, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's like, we don't do that in this house, and that, so go sit on the stairs. Like that's necessary sometimes. But a spank sometimes for something that's like big, or you're like, whoa, we don't ever scream back no. Like say that was it. It's like, oh, we need like a really effective discipline mechanism here, because she needs to know that that's really not okay. And that's like a serious crime in this house, or like lying. That's a big deal to us. So it was just a super helpful thing to hear like a godly woman be like, sometimes it is 100% just the most effective. And it was like, okay. So our system is that we kind of have pulled from other things. There's the 1, 2, 3 magic book that actually Sean and Andrew East shared with us, which we loved. Was so here's like kind of what we've come up with on our own, and is working pretty much for the most part. But whatever you do, if you do something, unless they know, it's a warning. So like, you're running around the house. We unfortunately have like kind of let them run on and off. I don't always like address it. So half the time that I'm like, we're not going to run anymore, that's my fault, because I'm like, we've let you sort of run in this home. So like, this is your warning. I'm telling you to stop running, and this is your warning, because we're trying to like have them not run in the house ever. So at least I am. I feel like Seth's a little more lenient, but I'm like, we don't need to run in the house. Like, no, it's dangerous. And half the time something happens. You know what I mean?
The running without grippy socks.
Grippy socks, but it's like, they're slipping and sliding. Evan's screaming her head off because she feels like she's being chased, which Kennedy used to hate too. So I'm like, I don't know. It just is a little stressful. And I feel like the best piece of advice my mom gave me is, if you can't handle it with like 1 or 2, nip it in the bud. So I'm like running. I cannot picture 5 children sprinting around the kitchen. Maybe when we have a bigger home, but right now it ain't happening. So we're getting into not running in the house. But where we've let them, it's like you get a warning. So typically 9 times out of 10, whatever they're doing, it's like, if you have an attitude, if you're playing too roughly, if you're running around the house, if you're saying no, it's a warning. Like this, I'm going to reiterate this. I'm telling you no, and this is your warning. The next time.
And a warning is like, you're put on blast, and each step we always try to explain. So it's like, we're always trying to teach them.
Yeah.
So like if you're doing something, the warning is like, hey, you might have been doing this for a couple minutes, but this is getting to a point where I'm asking you not to do it again.
Yeah.
It's getting out of control. I love you, but I'm asking you to stop doing this.
Yeah.
And if you do it again, then you will be getting in trouble. And that is what step 1 is.
Exactly. So that is the first step to our process. Number 2 is sitting on the stairs. So if we've warned you and you do it again, it's like, absolutely not. Go to the stairs. Like, why. And 1, 2, 3 magic kind of says, like, however old they are, that's how long they sit there. So Evan is 1, so she'll sit there for 1 minute, and typically that's all she can take anyway. She's almost 2, so like she gets it. And she knows what going to the stairs means. It's not like she's like, oh, okay. It's like, no, I don't want to go to the stairs, And I think it more so is like, you're in trouble, and it's helpful for us because it's like, we need a timeout sometimes. Like, it's like, I've told you to stop running and you're still running. Go to the stairs. And honestly, I will say, sending them to the stairs, we've also even, if the issue is like energy, then we'll be like, okay, go outside. Like, go outside. And there was one time recently that I was like, okay, Kennedy, I warned you. Now, instead of like sitting on the stairs, because I'm like, okay, you're clearly like hype right now. You need to get energy out. But I'm like making dinner. So go outside for 4 minutes because you're 4. And she was out there for like 20 minutes just playing. And like, sometimes they need a little reset too. And it's like helpful for me because I'm like, I need to breathe before I lose it. And that helps me to calm down and to not yell, or like, my go-to is raising my voice. And I don't want to do that. Like, that's like, I want a calm household. And it's something that I have done for my whole life, is just, if I'm angry, my levels rise. I'm not like the passive aggressive, like, okay, whatever. No, I am like fire. So that has always been, and it's something I really am trying to work on, especially as a mom and who is trying to maintain like a calm, lovely home. So sent her outside, and she like played out there. She was in the garden. She was playing with the hose, and it was just like, okay, this is nice. So sometimes it's great. And honestly, what I was going to say is 9 times out of 10, like, it doesn't escalate past that. Like, once they come back, it's like, they get the point. They're like, okay, I can't do that anymore. Our last phase of the system is a spank. So if we've warned you, if you've then gotten in trouble and you've sat on the stairs, then it's like deliberate disobedience at this point, and you will get a spank. Because I don't know, there's times, I think that for me, that was like the respect piece with my parents. It was like, if your kid knows that they can, and this is just from like books, this is not just my knowledge, but I've seen it in our children. If they know that they can talk to you a certain way, or get away with it, or tell you no, and kind of just like they will always test their boundaries. Like, they're gonna do it. You know what I mean? They're gonna push as hard as they can. So the second you're like, absolutely not, and I told you no, and we're getting a spank, it's like 9 times out of 10 they're ballistic before they even get a spank, because it's like, it's the offense. It's like, oh my gosh, they're not in control. They're seeing they're not in control, and it's not fun for them. And like, our spanks absolutely are not, like, half the time they're not even hard. Like, it's just, and I think, and sometimes they are. Sometimes they are if necessary, but like,
yeah, more times than not they are, because the spank is to reiterate the fact that you've now messed up. This is your third chance. And so it has to mean something for them. So like, to go in and then just give them a little tap. Yeah. Like,
but my point is, like, they'll be crazy regardless, even if it's like a soft one or something.
Of getting a spank,
yeah, it's like, no. And I remember from my dad, like, it would be light, but it was just like, I can't believe I'm getting a spank right now. Like, it would be the anger, the emotion, whatever. So I think it is important to draw that line. And even literally downstairs today, it was like, Kennedy, I think Seth had just went outside, and Seth's definitely more the disciplinarian. Like that's like the role, and that's kind of what we sort of decided. I know we're home all the time, but it's like he is the head of the household, and we've kind of, after trial and error, it's like, okay, you can be the one that spanks. I will if necessary if Seth's not here, but if he's here, he's going to be the one to do it. But you know, Seth had just gone outside, and Kennedy was like, you know, she'll never be like, no, I'm not doing that, but she will absolutely be like, no, I'm like, I'm wanting to do this instead or whatever. And that's what she was doing. And I was like, no, I told you to go upstairs, get dressed. The babysitter was on her way, and she was just in her underwear and, you know, whatever. And I'm like, no, you need to go upstairs and get dressed. Do you know how? And it's like, no, I don't want to because I'm whatever. And it's like, okay. Like, if I were to just be like, okay, or like, and of course, I didn't like send her to the stairs or anything, but it's like she knew. It was like, Kennedy, I will not ask you again. Then she knows what's coming. It's like, okay, if she does ask me again, I'm going to have to go sit on the stairs. Or if, you know, whatever, I'm going to have to go to spank. So it's like.
And can I say, I think that that is the benefit of having a system. And again, before we didn't have any system.
So they know it, yeah.
But like having a system at least puts everyone on the same page of knowing what's expected if something happens. Mm-hmm. So Jackie and I know, okay, if push comes to shove, we at least know the next step is if we're asking you to not do something and you're continue to do it, I have to follow the protocol, or I'm going to follow this protocol that we've established. Kennedy and Evan know that as well. So it's not like it's not like they're going to get spanked for something out of the blue. And there are definitely, I would say,
it hasn't happened yet.
I was going to say there are definitely some instances that probably cause for more attention or immediate discipline.
Yes.
So this is like our general system. Obviously, there's a couple
there's
things
like no warning.
Yeah, there's a couple things that's just like an absolute no, and that gets handled differently. But generally speaking, like this is the system that we try to follow, and we always try to explain so that we're always teaching them.
Yeah.
But at least everyone in the house is on the same page of you. First offense is a warning, you're put on blast. Second offense, you're getting punished. And again, usually by that time, sometimes it's just little stuff that they need to be distracted or they need to just calm down and have a moment to themselves, and that is enough to like get them to realize. And I think one of the important things is that I've had to learn is like understanding the age of kids. Mm-hmm. And I'm always, or at least before, I was thinking of kids being closer to my level than further away in terms of understanding, in terms of just like, but like remembering that Kennedy is 4, Evan is 1. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, Evan is almost 2, but it's still, she's technically 1 year old, which sounds so young to me, but like, you don't know yet, and there really is a period of teaching. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, as Kennedy and Evan get older, and Michael gets to the age too, I know the system will have to adjust, because ultimately the goal is that they are, you know, for us, we always say we want to be a great first-time listener. So if we ever ask you to do something the first time, the expectation is that it's done immediately when we ask you to do it. We're not there yet for everything, and sometimes they have different desires and want to do something else, and that's what essentially we're working through. But and so giving them 3 chances at this stage based on their age is what we feel like is appropriate to teach them, to allow them to learn in a way that there's, you know, a system. I could see in the future for Kennedy that changing to, you know, a warning and then an immediate action that's more, because at some point she has to learn that, okay, I don't always get 3 tries in life.
And you don't get to play the system either. So it's like, I'm fine sitting on the stairs, but there's a reason why we never really get to the spank sometimes, because she knows better. So like, I think the other important thing is knowing that like this, like a spank, again, that's like last resort. it's not always like necessary. It's not always the best thing. And I think there's like, there has to be, as a parent, there has to be like a creativity level or an intentionality level that like we're operating at, because sometimes it's like, I could give you a spank, but like, what's more effective sometimes? And I will say, literally from like growing up experience, when my dad took the time sometimes, and I got spanked till I was a little too old probably, like that's just what our punishments typically were. But when we kind of shifted into lectures, conversation, and you know, Kennedy's 4, she just turned 4, she's freshly 4, so like I think it's a little young to like, here, let's sit down and level with each other. But I think sometimes a conversation is more effective. So like sometimes we'll do that instead of like a spank. It's like, and I don't know, it just depends. But like, if we can tell she doesn't really understand like why what she's doing is a problem, then we'll maybe sit down and maybe explain to her why and tell her like the seriousness of it. But like discipline, and especially like it has to be effective. And I will never forget my dad telling me, and this was probably like a year ago, it's like it has to be something that is like enough for them. Because say, you know, when you tell them to do something, they need to do it, period. However you want to like make that happen, fine, but it has to be effective enough for that to be the result. Because if you're in a parking lot or if you're in the street and there's cars coming and they let go of your hand and they're running towards the intersection and you're saying, stop, you come here right now, they have to listen to that. You have, like, it's not just because you're a dictator, it's because it's for their safety. It's for respect. Like you need your kids to respect you. And of course you have to be respectable. So you don't just want to be like this crazy, like do what I say and half the time for no reason. And I remember talking with our marriage counselors, like about the 2 verses. So like, you know, the biggest, like, don't spare the rod. That's like the verse. When it comes to like believers and spanking and all that kind of stuff. And we don't believe it should be like first resort, or hopefully not super often and all that kind of stuff. But like the other verses, what? Don't provoke your children to anger or something. Forget the references, but I promise they exist. We have to be conscious of that too. Like I'm not just going to like discipline my kids over everything because then I'm wrong, or I'm being lazy or whatever. So it takes just a lot of work and intentionality.
And that's where I think us as parents have to discern the situation too, because and we definitely have responsibility in their behavior.
Yeah.
So like if Kennedy is just extremely energetic and I know that she hasn't had exercise today or whatever, like part of that is on us as the parent. So like just because she has a lot of energy, a spank isn't always suitable for the situation. Like if she's just wound up and needs to get out of the house or something like that, to me, I feel like that's on us to then say, okay, if you're not listening and you're not able to control this energy, so then instead of a spank, the form of punishment might be, okay, we're going to go outside and we're going to exercise, we're going to go on a walk, we're going to, like, I need to spend some type of extra intentional time with you to get you.
Yeah, like you're a kid, you're not.
Right, to get you where to be. So, like, she doesn't have full control of that yet at her age. I do think the thing, though, that I personally believe explaining, like always teaching, and I realize this between Kennedy and Evan in terms of even like their response. And I think a good example is even the way that they talk, like saying please or thank you or yes. Like part of it is starting in stages. And so with Kennedy, I think the stage was like yes or no. And so she would say yes or no. And then it's like, no, I want you to say yes, please, or no, thank you. And then then the next stage was, may I please? And so like every time it's like, I realized with Kennedy, it's like, well, I was starting with you as a baby, but then I'm changing this on you. With Evan, I feel like it's more like, okay, now from the beginning, I'm teaching Evan, may I please, so that she doesn't have to just start with yes or yes please and then work to may I please. It's like, no, I'm always, and even Michael, it's like from essentially day one, and obviously we're not getting there, but like speaking to Michael in the same manner that I speak to Kennedy.
Like, yes, no, may I please. There's no yeah or thanks or K. Like
reducing the levels so that it's always consistent and they're always hearing that. I feel, and I think I really do see that Evan picks up on it way faster than Kennedy ever did, because she's hearing
Kennedy
the full version of it from an earlier age, and maybe they don't fully, Evan is still struggling to say like sentences. Like,
I mean, but she'll say no
phrases.
thank you when she's ballistic. It's like, no thank you.
But
yes, please.
It's like that's what she's been, that's what she's grown up with. So that's what she's trained and heard. So that becomes her response, even though maybe it takes a little bit longer. It's not like I'm having to teach it in stages anymore, because it's.
And I think it depends on like the kids that you want to have. What's the culture of your home? If you want it to be more free, like running around the house, if that's fine. My sister has 4 kids now, and they are 100% allowed to run around and be loud and all that kind of stuff. I think it depends on your own personal tolerance, your personality, and just the culture of the home that you want to have. So it's different personality. Me and my sister are very different. We have different tolerances. Like she's fine with that, but I personally am not. Like, I don't want my kids running through the house and slipping over and, making a ton of noise while I'm making dinner and they're in the kitchen. Like, and I don't know. That is something that I feel like I've recently, unless they're helping, like they can absolutely help me in the kitchen, I will plop them on the counter and that's great. But if you're just like loud and going crazy and all that kind of stuff, like for me to be the best mother that I can be, like there is a point, there's a line. I can't personally operate at my best when I'm like overwhelmed and overstimulated and just like annoyed. Like, I don't want to be annoyed with my kids. Kids want control. Like they're looking for boundaries. It's a known proven fact that, like, or at least from everything that I've read, it's like kids want to, like, their flesh wants to like run free and all that kind of stuff, but there's a safety that comes with like routine and knowing boundaries. Like, it's important for them. And so for me personally, like, that's something I know that I just don't want, that I wish I were okay with it. I wish that I was just like free. Yeah, run around, bump into me, make a huge mess and all that kind of stuff. It's like, and I am very intentional about like letting them play and letting them get their energy out. But it's like, I think the goal is I want us to be able to operate at our best, to be the best parents that we can be. So if getting their energy out, like, I want our kids to be very comfortable going outside. I know we live in Texas, so we would never send them out when it's like 105 degrees, but it's like, if it's a little hot and I can stand to be outside, like, you're going to learn how to play outside sometimes, like, that's okay. That's kind of like, that's the culture we want in our home. We want kids that are able to go and be creative outside and play with some leaves, and because that's what I did growing up. Like, my there were 7 of us. My parents, there had to be boundaries, and we want more kids. If we had 2 kids and that's it, maybe it'd be fine. But where we do want a little bit more, like, of a bigger family, we have to start setting boundaries and rules now, and just being creative with a way that they can like get their energy out. So Seth takes them to the park a lot of mornings out of the week. We will get outside hands down at least once, twice a day at some point, and try to revolve things around them, make it fun for them. we've got lots of activities outside. So it's like we want a family that's very okay being outdoors and being creative, and we don't have to be out there. So we'll send our dog out there to be with them sometimes, just so, and we lift up the window. Like, if you knew the layout of our house, like we can see them very clearly, and they're just right there, and they are free to come in and out. But like, I think it just comes down to your tolerance and what you can handle and the lines that you need to draw for yourself. Nothing that we're choosing to do is like necessary. Maybe you're fine with certain things and that's great. But I think as long as you have some sort of vision of like the culture of your home, the tone of your home, like, do we want to just watch TV all day? Like, there's certain things that I feel like you need to just decide that you're going to do, or decide what's okay and what's not okay. If you're someone that you're like, look, I want to hear every word that my kid has to say to me. If they're having a hard time, like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen to them. Like, that is up to you, and that's fine. You know what I mean? I personally am like, kids are kids. Like, I want to hear you out. And if you're having a really hard time, I want to hear that. However, under no circumstance is it okay to hit your sister or whatever. And there will be consequences for that. There has to be. So it's just setting boundaries according to like what you feel like is necessary and what, you're willing to handle.
No, I like that. I think a great point you made, though, is the fact that like establishing your system based on the vision of your family. And so like knowing that we want, Lord willing, more kids and a bigger family, like kind of the rule of thumb that you said that your mom had of, if one kid is doing it, maybe that's okay, but if all the kids were doing it, how would that look? And then setting the standard based on that. So like setting your standard of discipline based on the vision of, okay, if we theoretically want a big family of 10 kids, if I'm on baby one and he's doing that and I had 9 other kids doing the same thing, is that acceptable or is it not? Like letting that be a good rule for establishing discipline. I really think, though, and kind of the whole point of this podcast is to share. Sometimes the best thing is just having a plan, and I think that's what we've learned. Our plan is a 3-step process, like we've discussed, and we're just sharing that for transparency. But if I could give anyone advice for parenting regarding discipline, it's to come up with a system that lets you and your spouse and your kids at least have some, even, you guys are on the same page.
Yeah.
You know what the expectation is. You establish an expectation and then handle. And it took us, like Jackie said, it's probably, we've probably been doing this for 6 months. And it's taken us all of 6 months to kind of get to a place, where it's like,
where they get it,
where they understand it, where we understand it. We've worked through some challenges with it, and we've had some opportunities come up that don't fit the mold of the system. So what do you do in those situations? Like you work through it, and but I definitely think having a system in place establishes a baseline, and then you can kind of deviate from that. So that really is our heart for today. If anyone is looking for some parenting advice or curious as to, what our thoughts are on parenting and kind of how we do it.
Yeah.
Not to say that we're perfect. Like our kids still have.
Yeah.
Every day is a jungle sometimes, but.
And we want to give them the freedom to like be kids. Like we don't. And I think that's the hardest line to find is like, yeah, they're just having fun. Like I want them to have fun. When I see Kennedy and Evan like wrestling on the couch, I love it. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, Evan has fallen off and like hit her head on the ground after like while playing with her on the couch. So it's like in my mind, I'm like, can I handle 5 kids roughing around on the couch, or even them too, even if we didn't have 5 kids and it was just them? Like this is a little stressful. That's parenting. So like I still am like somewhat, like sometimes I'll let them do it, and again that's just like it's on me. Like I can't just be like, okay, go sit on the stairs. But it's like I'm telling you right now, like, this is not the time. Like, I can't pay attention to you guys. And if something happens, I'm not going to be able to be there to like fix it. So we're not going to play on the couch right now. You guys can play on the ground, or you can go play outside or play in the garage and whatever. But I think too, respect is huge for both of us. And we want our kids as badly as we want to be friends with them and we want them to love us. Like, I am fully prepared for my daughters one day to not be my BFF, for me to not be their favorite person. I want them to know that I love them more than anything, and I am so there for them. I want to know every little piece of their life, whether I like it or not. But I also want them to know that they need to honor us and respect us, and that's big for us. And so I think a lot of our discipline techniques, it's like we hate doing it. We hate that, like, it gets to the point sometimes where sometimes I'm just like, can you please stop? Because like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to discipline you, but I have to, because that's my responsibility. And I, one day we'll see the Lord face to face, and I'm going to have to, like, that's my responsibility. I will like answer for how I parented and how I loved them, but also how I disciplined them. And did I I don't know, set them up for success in that way, or did I let them just run my entire life and they're just whatever? So I feel like even when we talked about like, no, thank you, yes, please, or like Kennedy's been saying thanks lately, and I'm like, no, we say thank you. Like, to us, again, there's nothing wrong with thanks, but to us, it's like, that the more intentional thing to me is like, thank you. Like, thank you. You're taking the time to actually look at me, and the eye contact is huge. So it's like, when I'm talking to you, if I'm disciplining you, you're going to look at me. Like, you have to pay me the respect. That is part of honoring your father and your mother. It's like, you're going to make eye contact with me. And that's something we work on with each other. If we're in an argument, of course I want to stare at the wall. I don't want to look at you, but it's like, that's respectful to look at someone when they're talking to you, period. So like, that's what we're teaching them. Or, may I please? It's like, that's not necessary. And maybe when they're 17 years old, like, we're not going to expect them to say, may I please? But like, right now, we want them to know how to speak to authority, how to speak to someone who, how to speak to us, period. So I think that's important too, is to, like, don't be afraid to think about what you want. And even if you're far from it, like, like I said, Kennedy just started saying thanks, and I don't know where she got it from. I probably say it honestly, but it's like, no, you are going to say thank you, and I'm going to try to be the best example that I can be for that, to help you do so. But like, decide, talk with your spouse. Like, what do we want? What do we want our family to look like? What do we want to be acceptable for them to do? If we're at a restaurant and they know that we're not going to discipline them, and so they're just acting a fool, and we're at the table and they're screaming their head off, like, what am I going to do about that? Am I going to let that fly because like, I care about like people staring, or I just don't feel like it, like disciplining them? Or am I going to, do something? Like, if we're at a restaurant, nothing changes. Obviously they can't go sit on the stairs, but it's like, we will go to the bathroom and have a conversation. We will go to the car and we will get a spank if necessary. Like, there's nothing, like, it is incredibly important. And I know these days it's like a tough, topic of conversation, because I feel like disciplining your kids has just changed. And I think just society in general, like, it's probably less strict and all that, which I love. I don't, want I think things need to continue to evolve. There's a lot more resources, which is why we're not like, oh, our kids are just going to get spanked, because that's kind of how it started out. But we've learned a lot, and we're continuing to learn and continuing to read things and listen to podcasts and talk to people, and there's a lot of information out there. So I think we're very open to that, but that's where we're at now. And I will say it has helped a lot. And now, Kennedy on her own, it's just like, may I please, we would never like spank her for not saying that, by the way, or even send her to the stairs or anything like that. It's just, those are kind of like side things, but the teaching part is important, like it goes hand in hand with discipline. We can't just discipline them. We have to take the time to teach them, and it takes a lot of work and intentionality, but yeah.
And I think too, part of teaching though, and I'm glad you said this, part of teaching is tying it back to the word, at least for us. So like everything, that as we try to live our lives, the reasoning, we try to tie it back to the word. And so for Kennedy and Evan right now, our explanation of why we do things, maybe, sometimes it might be very obvious. It's like we don't steal because, or whatever. But even beyond that, it's always like we might ask them to go upstairs and brush your teeth. Like, you know how to do that, you could do that, and you don't want to. But if you choose not to, you're not honoring your father and your mother, which is a commandment. And so we've taught them, this is what the Bible says about it. This is why, like, if you don't do it, you're not honoring mommy and daddy, but you're also not honoring God because you're disobeying God's word. And so that, I think, is a very important piece of parenting, of how to tie it back to the word.
Because they're not robots.
Right. And so we want to teach them also, like, we're not just making this stuff up. It's not always, and there are definitely times I've said, because I say so, like, I need you to do this. But it really comes down to the deeper understanding and level of, like, honor, the honor system, learning to love and respect. And that is the character that we are trying to instill in our kids.
Yeah.
To be ones who love, who respect authority, respect, other people, and they do it out of honor towards their parents. And I know even just in like other cultures, like we were talking about this recently, kids honor their parents by like being a part of the family and helping the family, and like, with jobs, with chores around the house, like they're useful, helpful tools. It's not like they're just entitled to like do whatever they want and they can go veg out while the parents are stressed trying to do everything. And I think that's also part of like again, it comes back to the vision of your home. What are you trying to establish? And set up a system, set up rules that can like assist and help build that for you, because they're just as much as part of the family as it's not just Jackie and I. Like, we have to function well together. So we need to create a system of order, a system of discipline in the house to do that.
Yeah, and to that point, this is the last thing that I want to say. I remember saying, like, I'll never tell my kids, like, because I said so, because I hated that. But I remember doing that, and it was just like, this is, number one, taking way too much time. Number two, it's like, then I'd be like, well, go do it first, and then we'll talk about why. Then I was just like, literally, I said so, go do it. Like, that's it. Like, you have to respect and honor me enough to do it, whether you understand or not. And that is directly correlated to a relationship with the Lord. It's obedience. It's not just like, I don't have to understand every little thing and every reason why and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I might not even be, emotionally or mentally mature enough to handle the why. But it's like, I am in charge. And that's something that we say, sometimes we'll ask, like, who's in charge? And she'll joke and be like, I'm in charge with mommy, or me and daddy are in charge. And it's just like, but she knows at the end of the day, mommy and daddy are in charge. That's the reality. It's not, there's tons of reminders and they're kids. And I especially am way more like free a little bit. Like, I'm sure it doesn't sound like it while talking about discipline, but like, trust me, like they should probably get in trouble a little bit more than they do for sure. But it's like, at the end of the day, I scrapped that. And it's like, because I am in charge, mommy told you to do so. I'm asking you to, and some, of course, I'll explain. Sometimes it's like, well, because we need to brush our teeth because we don't want to have, I always say we don't want to have holes in our teeth. So that definitely scares her. But it's like, because we like it, that's what we need to do. We always need to brush our teeth so they're clean. So there's whatever. But like sometimes it's like, I don't want to. Why? If you're whining and you're actually not curious, you just don't want to do it. It's like, no, I said so go brush your teeth. Period. And if you're not going to listen, then we will get in trouble. And I think, kind of like Seth was saying, it's like that it is the reality, like, of real life. Like, if the Lord asks us to do something, I don't always get to know the reason why. And there's not always time to sit there and try to understand and unpack why you might be asking me to do that. But it's like, I respect and fear you enough and honor you. So like, I will do that. And we want them to learn that in a classroom setting. Like, we have no idea what we're going to do school wise, but like, if she's in a classroom setting, she can't be sitting asking the teacher why they have to line up. It's like, just do it. That's part of respecting authority. So that is, I think, all we have today. It's a great conversation, very enlightening, but
yeah,
I think that's all, right?
it
Do you have
is.
any other?
I'm looking to see. I'm reminded of a quote. I heard this the other day, and this goes back to obedience, like the heart of obedience. It was Tim Ross said this, but he said, life isn't about momentum, it's about obedience. We do what we do, and the people we are supposed to reach, that's who we're supposed to reach. And so he was talking about like one person might be called to influence millions of people. One person might be called to be a cash register at a gas station that maybe comes in contact with 100 people a year. Like, but everyone is called to do something, and it's not always about, I'm trying to build momentum. I'm trying to be the biggest, the best.
Yeah.
It's about doing what God has called you to do, and that comes down to a heart of obedience. And so as long as, like, we as children of God have to be trained to be obedient to his voice and to his word.
Yeah.
And it starts with kids, and it starts with teaching them when they're 0 and 1 to obey the voice of their parent, so that they will also then learn to obey the voice of our Heavenly Father God. That is like the heart of obedience.
Yeah.
And I think that is really why we've been stewarded with 3 girls at this point to raise them the best way that we know how. And I'm so thankful for God's grace, because I know we said that at the beginning. I don't have a sense of fear like I'm going to ruin them by any means, but I do have a sense of responsibility that I have to prepare them for to grow up in this world, and I want them to be successful and to be well off and have understanding of what this world really is all about. And it really does come down to, I think, obedience. That's such a huge foundational element of, obeying and having the discipline to obey. And so that is like the deep principle of discipline, and why we need to discipline and teach, and
not even just like what this world is all about, but like what being a believer is all about. I don't, and that's obviously personal to us, but it's like, in this world, you don't have to have a relationship with your sister. You don't have to make amends, and you don't have to have a relationship, but it's like, as a believer, we're called to, be united and to mend on our end if we can. So like, I can't just sit and be bitter with Seth. Like, that's not an option for me, nor do I want that. And there's a reason why, that's not like what we're supposed to do, whatever. But it's like, I am called, whether I want to or not, to, work whatever issues out that I have with my husband. That's what I'm called to do. So even when it comes to like bigger picture, it's like, this world might operate a certain way, but like, you are called to honor your father and mother. My dad's dad, he did not respect whatsoever. He didn't, like, mentally, but it's like he had to show signs of respect. He honored his father and mother no matter what they did or who they were, which is another conversation. But it's like, that's what I want for my children. I will give them my best, which I'm sure, whatever. We will give them our best, and that's between them and the Lord, but they're called to honor us. And we want them to operate in that, like whether we are perfect or not. It's like, that's what you're called to. And, not to like get points or anything, but it's like to please the Lord. That's what we want for you. So thank you for listening.
Oh, this was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Anytime we talk about something, it always just gets me thinking more about it. And so I know kids, very passionate about kids and just the next generation having a responsibility to raise them in the right way. Like, that's something that I think is so important and such a main role of our lives. So love talking about that. But we would also be interested to hear other people's thoughts on parenting. So if y'all would want to share, or like share what is your system, like what's your discipline, because we're always looking for, and again, we're talking literally from our experience. Like, we have no degrees, we're not experts at this, but like, we try things. If it works, we keep it. If it doesn't, we move on and try something else. So and I know that this is just for the season of life that we're in. Like, soon Kennedy's going to be, like we said, she's got to get to a point where she's a great first-time listener. And this system isn't necessarily set up for that. So I know that we're going to have to be changing that somewhat soon. And so if you guys are ahead of us in life, like, we would love to hear what your thoughts are and stuff like that. So thank you for tuning in.
Yes, we appreciate it as always. And if you enjoy listening to us whatsoever, we always appreciate a review or subscribe. But what is it? Not a review, a rating. That's important too. We appreciate it. It just helps us to like get out there a little bit and for other ears to land on this podcast, which means a lot to us. So we love you guys so much. We do this for you. Literally, we mean that, and we just appreciate you so much. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next Thursday.
Yes, again, I'm Seth.
And I'm Jackie.
This is Never TMI, and we are signing off.
Peace.